Alright everyone, hello. Today's video is going to be a little bit of a, not so much a rant, more just a discussion about some of the stuff upcoming this year for Watt. Excuse me. So, I just wanted to cover I think it's Common Test 2 for update 1.20. If you guys were here for, like, just after Christmas, Wargaming released a whole video about, like, all the cool stuff that's going to come this year. Some stuff I'm personally excited for are a lot of map reworks and autocannons, which is a whole different thing I'll get into in another video whenever they come out or whatever. But there are some things that worried me a little bit. So if you've been on the stream a bunch, you'll know that I am a pretty big fan of this thing here, the AMX M4. It is a tank that for a very long time sat basically in complete irrelevancy and then got a pretty insane buff that turned it into being, frankly, very good. You'd have to be kind of blind or just not playing at the higher tiers to not see this thing consistently. So I think for a while now, everyone kind of expected a nerf was going to come down the line. It already got nerfed once, but it was still performing very well, so I had a hard time imagining it wouldn't get another nerf. I just wasn't really prepared for them to nerf it to a point where it's arguably worse than it was before it got the original buff in the first place, which I'll get into why that is a particular problem, at least in my opinion, in a minute here. So here's the thing. I understand a nerf's needed, right? But the thing that made the AMX buff so cool in the first place is it took a tank everyone was rather, I don't know, conflicted by its existence. Like, it really just didn't bring anything to the table, to the limelight, which is cool, because if there's one thing that, for example, this kind of surprised me, I don't know why it did, but it did, we have been in, like, the Chieftain, hull down spam meta for 4 years. I didn't even realize the Chief came out 4 years ago. I mean, it doesn't even feel like 4 years have passed, but you get my point. We've been dying for a meta shift in pubs, in competitive, everything. It has been the same handful of tanks, the whole time. So it's really cool to have seen the AMX here kind of get its limelight, its 15 minutes of fame. And unfortunately, that's what it looks like it's going to end up being if these changes go through, which when they're on the common test, they generally do. However, that's not really the purpose of today's video, is to talk about the AMX M4. It's kind of the point, though. If you look down, the way that the balance is being done, where World of Tanks as a game, so you have your tier 1 to 10, right? Wargaming tends to treat them as, like, kind of 3 separate games, where you have tier 8, 9, and 10 is its own thing. You have tier 6 as its own thing, and then you kind of have everything else, being tier 1 to 5 and tier 7. Where they're just not really, that looked after, I guess, as opposed to tier 6, 8, 9, and 10. You could even argue just tier 6, 8, and 10. But the point being is Wargaming seems to be in an effort of, like, almost ignorant, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, focus? I don't know. They're just treating the tier 8, 9, and 10 as one thing. So they're nerfing the tier 9, again, which I don't really think needs it. I'll get into why after I discuss the AMX 65T, which I'm sure, especially after the buffs, a handful of you are rather familiar with. This is a tank that is very, very well known for being, quite frankly, atrocious. And I understand why. The point is, it's meant to be a free XP sink / gold sink, whatever, right? I get that. However, the reason I find this to be a more significant problem than it might be on the surface is I feel like it kind of speaks to Wargaming's balancing philosophy as a whole, and I think it's inherently flawed, which, brave statement, I know. I'm sure no one was ready to hear that. It's just one of the things that, despite being pretty excited for some of the things in the 2023, like, hype video, this definitely doesn't give me a lot of confidence. I was hoping for a rebalance, meaning that tanks that need buffs will get buffs, tanks that need nerfs will get nerfs, so on and so forth. Very naive of me. Oh, excuse me. But they're making this thing, I think, even slower than it already is and giving it even worse gun handling. Which, the point is, on Wargaming side, playing devil's advocate, is they want the buffs and nerfs to be consistent through the main part of the line, being tier 8, 9, and 10, right? Everything before that is its own thing. Everything after that is, its own thing. So I find that the reason I'm not confident in their ability to rebalance stuff generally well, and how this all kind of plays into that is it's like using a sledgehammer for a job where you need a chisel, if that makes any sense. There's just no nuance to it. For example, again, with other things that are getting buffed and nerfed, you can look at even the Rhinoceronte is getting a buff, but it's pretty meaningless. I mean, there is a nice thing coming where I think they're upping the shell velocity from 750 to like 1173, which is really, really comfy. Super good. Those are the kind of changes we want to see. At least speaking from my perspective. However, they're buffing the turret armor on this, and you might think before you go, wowie wowie, we don't need more hull down monsters, whatever. It's a really significant buff. Insignificance is the word I'm looking for. It just doesn't really change much, where you could maybe do a bit more with the DPM. You could do a bit more with the gun handling. You could do a bit more just making it more fun to play. And the reason I feel the AMX M4 was such a good tank to have at tier 10, and again, I'll mention just in a second why I feel that way. Well, for another reason, I guess, is because what is the thing that separates the Chief from the AMX? The AMX now is, rather substantially slower. You have more alpha, but the main thing is the AMX is not like complete trash to fight. And the reason that's the case is because there are weak points. If you don't know, and for some reason a lot of people don't, the gun manlet is particularly weak around here and around here. Two like similar tier heat rounds, or even some low tier 9 can do it as well. Tier 8 is a bit more iffy. But you have two hatches on the roof. You have the one on the right here, the one on the left. You have a lower plate. You have these shoulders. You have the turret ring. Like, there's just a lot of weak points, frankly, compared to a Chief, where if it's hull down, you can try and pen under the gun sometimes, or you can pen the hatch. Good luck trying to explain that to your average player in a pub match. But the philosophy of the AMX, where you're great at dealing damage, but you can't just sit there and decimate everyone all the time, because you do have weak points. So I'd love to see more nuanced stuff like that, as opposed to just we are blanket nerfing or blanket buffing. It's just unnecessarily frustrating. I don't even want this to really get into the Progetto 65 nerfs, for example, for fear of this video becoming like 30 minutes, but I'll give you a very brief kind of overview of how I feel about the nerfs. The Progetto 65, in my opinion, went from being one of the most exciting, fun, and just overall enjoyable tier 10s in the game to being just downright tragic. The thing is, when it comes to buffs and nerfs, and at least my point of view on it, generally comes down to the gun handling should basically never be touched. I don't really think of that much that's more frustrating to me than not being able to hit what I'm aiming at. It's just like an unbelievable level of like anger buildup. Just, there's so many levels of RNG in this game. Don't make it worse. And what they did with the Progetto 65, if you hadn't played it, was they made the gun handling worse and the DPM worse. Now, if you're gonna change gun handling, you generally, again, just in my point of view, would leave better DPM, because that really permits you being able to kind of compensate for the fact you're not hitting your shots by sending out more shots, increasing your likelihood that you'll hit. However, Wargaming decided to just get rid of both. This way, when you fire a shot, you will probably miss. You do have to build this thing basically completely for gun handling and compensate for that. But something they're nerfing about it is the upper plate. You'll notice that the upper plate on the Progetto 65 tends to be rather bouncy, particularly against, anything, even high caliber guns that kind of auto aim at it or miss the turret, whatever. However, they're going to make that overmatchable now by, of course, anything with a 122 millimeter gun or larger, which is just so exciting. I really find it to be, again, just a really not innovative way to nerf a vehicle. I don't know why they decided to nerf this again. It's like digging it out of the grave just to, kind of kill it again and then rebury it. I don't know where that's coming from. But anyway, I just really wanted to mention, sort of the reality is that you're always going to have tanks that are better than others, right? So if you just delete the AMX from the game, right, it's gone, done. You're going to have another tank that'll take its place, probably the S-Conk. You delete the S-Conk, you'll have another tank that takes its place, so on and so forth. It's not a bad thing for some tanks to be better than others, even by a good chunk. That's okay. The reason it should be is because we need these balance updates to be consistent, time-wise. Now, ideally, you'd have like a, every 2 months or every 3 months, quarterly, whatever, where it's okay to have a new tank on top. I'd love to see an update where the Panzer 7, for example, is really, really freaking good. I'd love to have one where the 121 is really good, the 113 is really good. Maybe the AMX-30B. Oh man, that'd be so exciting. I love that thing. You can go back to, a K91. You could do E50M, M48, Sheridan even. Like, there are so many tanks that could do just some minor tweaks and make them relevant and interesting. Basically exactly what they did to the AMX. And then once you get them more in a reasonable place, then you can kind of fine-tune them instead of wargaming, just deciding, I hope you had fun, but it's going back to the trash now. Anyway, hopefully that kind of clarifies, I guess, where I stand on the upcoming content year. I do hope we'll see some really good stuff, but regardless, thanks for hanging out and listening to me rant. Hopefully, you guys maybe share some opinions, or maybe you'll feel different. Maybe if everything were just the exact same, that would be better. I don't know. But anyway, I'll catch you guys around on stream. The link will be in the pinned comment below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.